Imagine this. You plant your garden in the spring, and then you just let it grow. No frantic trips to the garden center for expensive fertilizers, no stressing over yellowing leaves, no hauling heavy plastic bags of soil amendments every single year just to keep your tomatoes alive. Sounds impossible, right? But what if I told you there's a soil technology out there that could make this your reality? Not some expensive, lab-created miracle juice patented by a massive agricultural corporation, but a forgotten breakthrough that's been literally buried under our feet for thousands of years. Now, before you roll your eyes and click away thinking, if it's so great, why haven't I heard of it? That is exactly the point. While everyone is obsessed with buying the next bottle of neon-colored chemical NPK booster, chasing a quick harvest, there's an ancient solution that quietly outperforms them in ways most modern gardeners can't even wrap their heads around. It's permanent, it's entirely organic, and it's so simple you can make it in your backyard with yard trash. Yet, it's been completely overshadowed by a multi-billion-dollar fertilizer industry. Stick around, because what you're about to discover might just flip everything you thought you knew about growing plants on its head. Ever wonder why your garden seems to get worse every year, despite all the money and effort you pour into it? There's a reason you're constantly trapped in a cycle of buying more products, and honestly, it's not your fault. The truth is, the commercial fertilizers we rely on today are basically fast food for your plants. Sure, you dump them on and get a sudden sugary burst of lush green growth. It feels like you're doing the right thing, but they come with a hidden, devastating price tag that most people never see. Let's talk about what's really happening in your dirt. You've probably experienced this frustrating cycle. You buy fresh, fluffy potting soil from the store. Year one, it works beautifully. It feels light and crumbles easily in your hands. But by year 2 or 3, it turns into absolute concrete. When you try to water it, the moisture doesn't even soak in. It just beads up and runs off the sides, leaving your plant's roots bone dry. Sometimes you'll even see this weird, crusty white or yellowish film forming on the surface. That is the chemical fertilizer doing what it does best, destroying your soil's ecosystem. See, synthetic fertilizers are essentially highly concentrated salts. When you apply them, they trigger rapid, almost freakish plant growth, oversized leaves, and quick results. But it's a short-term illusion. Through a ruthless biological process called osmosis, these chemical salts literally suck the moisture straight out of the delicate living organisms in your soil. We're talking about the beneficial microbes, the nematodes, the earthworms, the microscopic workforce that actually keeps your soil healthy and structured. You are essentially nuking them. And without those tiny workers moving around, digesting organic matter, and producing the sticky, glue-like compounds that bind soil particles together, the earth completely collapses. What used to be a breathable, sponge-like matrix turns into a compacted brick the second it rains. Your plant roots are literally suffocating. And the kicker? Most of those expensive synthetic nutrients are highly water-soluble. They just wash right past the roots, leaching into the groundwater and polluting local waterways. So by next spring, your soil is dead, depleted, and completely dependent on, you guessed it, another expensive bag of chemicals just to survive. You think you're growing a natural garden, but really? You're just running a really poorly designed hydroponic system in the dirt. It's a cycle that benefits the big garden brands, not you. But what if there was a better way? Something permanent, sustainable, and virtually free? To find it, we have to look away from modern science and travel thousands of years back to the Amazon rainforest. Now, the Amazon might look lush, but naturally, the soil there is famously terrible. It's highly acidic, as sandy as it gets, and subject to relentless tropical downpours that wash away any fragile topsoil. By all accounts, it should be impossible to grow massive, sustainable crops there. Yet, indigenous people over 2,000 years ago managed to do exactly that. And here's the mind-blowing part. The soils they created back then are still rich, jet black, and incredibly fertile to this very day. Scientists call it terra preta, or Amazonian dark earth. You can dig down 2 meters deep in the middle of the jungle and find these astonishingly rich patches of dirt standing in stark contrast to the pale, dead clay around it. How did they do it? It wasn't a chemical breakthrough, it was fire. They took their food waste, crushed bones, plant residues, broken pottery, and most importantly, specially produced charcoal and buried it. They created something we now call biochar. But let me stop you right there. This is not the charcoal left over in your backyard grill. True biochar is a completely different beast, and the magic isn't in the carbon material itself, it's in its physical architecture. If you look at a piece of true biochar under a microscope, it doesn't look like a solid black rock. It looks like a breathtaking fractal-like labyrinth of tiny tunnels and pores. Think about a living tree. A piece of wood is essentially a bundle of microscopic straws designed to suck water and nutrients up the trunk. When you create biochar, you subject that wood to extreme heat without oxygen. All the water, sap, and volatile gases are violently driven out, leaving behind a pure, indestructible carbon skeleton. Imagine a towering skyscraper and suddenly all the drywall, furniture, and glass are cleared out, leaving nothing but the rigid steel frame and thousands of empty rooms. That's biochar. Because of this insane internal geometry, a single gram of high-quality biochar has the surface area of several tennis courts. When you mix this stuff into your garden, it acts like a permanent, indestructible sponge. When those heavy spring rains come, it absorbs the water and holds onto it like a vault, slowly releasing it to your plants during scorching summer droughts. It aggressively traps free-floating nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus inside its carbon walls so they don't wash away. But most importantly, those millions of empty, microscopic rooms become the ultimate luxury apartment complex for beneficial microbes and mycorrhizal fungi. It gives them a dark, damp, completely safe environment to thrive and multiply, safe from larger predators. The biochar itself doesn't directly feed your plants. Instead, it builds the permanent physical infrastructure that allows an entire web of life to explode beneath the surface. It is the cast iron skillet of the gardening world. Tough, reliable, and it literally gets better with age. Now, here's where things get really exciting. You don't need to travel to the Amazon or buy overpriced boutique soil amendments online. You can make massive amounts of biochar right in your own backyard using nothing but yard waste and a clever little trick called the double barrel method. It's surprisingly straightforward. You start by taking small, dry pieces of wood, twigs, or even pine cones and packing them tightly into a sealed metal container like a small steel drum or a sturdy paint can that has just a few small vent holes punched in the bottom. Then, you place that sealed container inside a larger outer barrel. Pack the space between them with scrap wood, brush, or whatever burnable yard waste you have, and set the outer material on fire. As that outer fire roars to life, the intense heat bakes the inner chamber. Soon, you'll hear this low hissing sound. That's the wood inside breaking down and releasing highly flammable organic gases, known as syngas. These gases push out through those vent holes at the bottom and burst into bright, clean flames, which fuels the fire even hotter while producing surprisingly little smoke. Once the roaring flames begin to die down and the gas stops venting, here is the critical step. You have to let it cool completely without exposing it to the oxygen in the air. If you open it too soon, the oxygen rushes in, and your beautiful carbon structure will just burn away into useless white powdery ash, releasing all its value into the atmosphere. But if you wait for it to cool, you pop open that inner barrel, and you're greeted with a batch of incredibly lightweight, shimmering black material. It's so pure that when you clink two pieces together, it almost sounds metallic. Boom. You've just created the physical foundation for a 2,000-year-old soil system. But wait, hold on. If you take this fresh, pristine biochar and dump it directly into your garden beds right now, you are going to make a massive mistake. In fact, your plants might actually turn yellow and suffer in the short term. Why? Because right now, your biochar is a massive, completely empty sponge. If you put it in the dirt, it will immediately start sucking up all the ambient nutrients and moisture from the surrounding soil to fill its empty pores, starving your plant's roots in the process. Remember the empty skyscraper analogy? Before you officially open the doors to the public, you have to furnish the rooms and move the tenants in. You absolutely must charge or inoculate your biochar first. The easiest and most effective way to do this is to crush those black chunks into smaller pieces, about the size of peas or coarse gravel, so you expose even more of that crazy surface area. Then, throw them into a bucket and submerge them in a highly concentrated nutrient-rich soup. I'm talking a dark, earthy brew of rainwater, compost tea, liquid kelp, worm castings, maybe a glug of sticky, sweet molasses to really kickstart a microbial feeding frenzy. Pour this liquid over your crushed biochar and just let it steep for a couple of weeks. During this resting period, capillary action will pull those dissolved nutrients deep into the microscopic pores, and billions of beneficial bacteria will aggressively colonize the carbon, setting up camp in their permanent new home. When you pull that biochar out of the bucket 2 weeks later, it is no longer just dead, inert charcoal. It is a biologically active, wildly living, nutrient-loaded power source for your garden. When you finally mix this deeply charged biochar into your soil, the results are nothing short of game-changing. In side-by-side tests, crops grown in biochar-enriched dirt consistently show significantly thicker stems, wildly lush foliage, and massive, deeply penetrating root systems compared to plants living on standard fertilizers alone. And the real flex happens in the dead of summer. When your neighbors' gardens are wilted, stressed, and begging for the watering hose, your biochar beds will still be holding cool, life-giving moisture just beneath the surface. You'll barely need to water them, while everyone else is stuck in that endless loop of buying, dumping, and depleting. Your soil is actually getting better year after year with almost zero intervention. You're not just throwing fertilizer at a problem anymore. You are fundamentally changing the way you interact with the earth. You're no longer treating your garden like a broken machine that needs expensive chemical band-aids. You're building a complex, living biological ecosystem. Taking ordinary yard trash, turning it into biochar, and returning it to the soil means you aren't just gardening for the current season. You're actively participating in a natural cycle that will outlast you. You're creating a rich, dark legacy of soil fertility that could literally stick around for centuries. So why keep throwing your money at fast food fertilizers designed to keep you buying more? The future of your garden is hiding in the ashes of the past, just waiting for you to rediscover it. Roll up your sleeves, start a fire, and change the way you grow forever.